Oh, and we're good. We're rolling.
Well, that was quick.
All right, Danny Ching, welcome to
What's going on?
Welcome to the Passion Project, buddy. Thank you for coming down. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem.
Super stoked. We're going to go deep, but I have a funny one. So I've been trying to get you down here for a bit, and we had a cancellation a couple weeks ago. And I was
issue.
like, you texted me like, hey, there's going to be a lot of wind, and I'm not going to be able to make it. And I was in my head, I was like, dude, you're going to cancel for me for wind? And then I looked at the wind forecast. I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to be as windy as we get. And so if you are a world-class paddler and the wind is going to be bombing here, you cancel everything. It'd be like, right?
Yeah, and it also happened to be on a day where I could get out. The girls were at school, the wife's at work, everything kind of lined up. And I was like, I just have this one thing I got to cancel, and then I can go, which is better than canceling 7 things to go.
I'm okay to be chopped liver for that. I get it. I equated, I was like, that'd be if like the waves were going off and all the pros are like, I got to go do an interview. Like, no, I'm going surfing. So it was funny. But thank you for coming down today. Super stoked. You're a super busy guy, which will fit into the storyline here. But let me start with a bit of an introduction. So if you're a paddler, almost of any kind of paddle craft, you know this guy, you know Danny Ching. Danny's got incredible, like the last 20 plus years, incredible accolades. And we're not going to dig into all of them today, but things like 3 world championships in the Molokai Channel. What do you have? 3 Battle of the Paddle stand-up championships.
Yeah, I got a couple of those too.
So a couple of those, Dragon Boat World Championships, and a zillion other top of the top races, whether it be 6-man or 9-man or V1. So just incredibly accomplished, which is fun. We'll talk about a lot of those different things that you do. There's not a lot of people, I don't think, that have that many. There's a lot of people that are narrow. Like I think of someone you know well, like Jamie Mitchell, 10 Molokai prones, or Kelly Slater has his 10 or 11 world championships on WSL, but you've got it on multiple crafts. So we'll talk about that because that's a little bit less common. And you do all this while you're also a super accomplished coach. You're a dad of 2 that you drag these girls with you all the time. It looks like they're super happy to do it. Your wife's a super busy gal. You're a business owner with 404 and Hippo Sticks, and you got some cool stuff coming there. So to be able to do all those things and still be at the top of the top athletically is really impressive. And I think for a lot of us go, how do you do that? Like I was telling you, I've got one kid at home right now with me. I was like, I could barely get out the door. So how you can continue to train at that level is going to be something I look forward to digging into. And then part of what we're going to talk about today, Danny, is like, it's really cool what you've accomplished, but it's like not just the what, but it's like the how and the why. And so we're going to talk about how all of that has come and kind of connect the dots. And as I always say in this podcast, it's not a paddling podcast, but there's going to be a fair bit of it today. But it's also, I know you from afar, probably like most people. Like we don't know each other super well, but I've watched you, whether at races or online, and hear the stories because of your accomplishments. But I don't know how someone gets from, when you're a kid to you become an athlete, become a coach at this level. And I'm really curious, and I know we can dig around online and find a lot of stories about you, but I'm just kind of excited to connect all the dots. So that's kind of the game plan for today.
Sounds like it's going to be
cool.
fun.
Awesome. Well, listen, let's start with a little history here, because if I recall, your name is clearly Danny Ching, but what's your full name?
So I was the firstborn in a long time in our family, extended family, so everyone kind of threw a name in there, and kind of more the Hawaiian side. So Daniel Dawson Hepala Hakuole Ching.
Rad. And that's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. But that's, you just said the Hawaiian angle. So you have your family's got a Hawaiian heritage.
Yeah, my dad's from Hawaii.
Your dad's from Hawaii. So we're going to talk about that right now. What's your name say on your driver's license?
Just says Daniel Hepala Ching because it doesn't fit.
Doesn't fit.
So yeah,
curious.
In grade school I had to pick one of my middle names to kind of just go around with me, and I know my grandma wanted me to use Dawson because that was her favorite middle name, and I ended up picking Hepala because it was the middle one.
But it's super, for me, I always love all of those layered Hawaiian names. Is each not so much a middle name, but is each one of those like a family name or something tied to your legacy or something?
Yeah, so what I learned in the Hawaiian culture through my family was some of the maiden names from the grandmas or great grandmothers that come in, and then those family names sort of disappear. They get brought back in, younger generations' middle names. So both my daughters have middle names from either grandparents or great-grandparents or, 5, 6, 7 generations ago, middle names or last names that had disappeared.
No, that's so cool. I never knew that. That's really neat. Like, so I'm a Jewish kid. In the Jewish tradition, middle names are usually like the initial of someone that's passed, but I love that you keep the names alive for generations by reintroducing those like that. I'd never heard that. That's so neat. Thanks for sharing it. But when I saw it, I was like, I wonder what his driver's license says.
It doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit. Okay, so let's talk about that. So can we talk about your family? And you're here we are in Southern California. You mentioned Hawaii. Can you talk about maybe Hawaii or where your parents grew up or how all that, where did you come from?
So I was born and raised in Redondo Beach. My dad's actually from Oahu, and his family basically came from Maui. So he was born and raised on Oahu, ended up in Hermosa, Redondo Beach, started a canoe club. That's where he met my mom, and that's basically his version, short side. My mom's side, she's second or third generation, South Bay or Hermosa Redondo area. And so I know my grandma came from Nebraska. My great grandpa Squire was in Redondo in like the early 1900s.
Oh, wow.
So on my mom's side, it's like super local to the city. And then my dad's side's Hawaiian. So bringing that together, I still live in the same city, basically. I'm 7 blocks from my dad's house. I'm 2 blocks from the house I grew up in.
Wow.
And I attended the same school as my grandfather. My kids are probably gonna go to the same high school. And yeah, so everything's just kind of right in that area. And I've had a chance to travel and do a bunch of things, and they're like, okay, you're an adult, live wherever you want. And I was like, I'm good. I like it here.
It's not a bad spot.
It's a good spot.
And you've built both. It sounds like, and we'll talk about it. You're part of a big community there. You've also helped build part of the community there from the paddling to Lanakila side, which we'll talk about.
My dad started the canoe club, and so that part being that community, and then my family living there for so many generations. That's another part of the community. Plus, my mom's side of the family still lives in the area. So
got it.
It's real hard to leave when you got a lot of good people around.
For sure. Yeah. My wife and I both grew up about 4 miles from where we sit right now. We haven't gone very far either for that same exact reason. And as we've talked about, like Newport Aquatic Center, very, very well, but that's like the third tip of my triangle of life. It's my home, my office, and NAC. So I can't go very far. You said your dad grew up in Waikiki. Or in Oahu. I think was it Waikiki where you grew up?
He's backside Diamond Head, Kaimuki area.
Oh, got it.
So walking through like the Kala golf course.
It's a good spot right there. I was just there. It's hard to beat. And you've spent a lot of time over there, which will come back in the story. How did Dad end up here?
Well, that's a funny story. He was the youngest in his family. He was getting a little bit of trouble. He was racing hot rods. He got caught a few times. And they basically, back then, it was, hey, you can go to jail or you can go to the military. He chose the military.
And this is while he was on Oahu?
This was while he was on Oahu. He was in between the Korean War and Vietnam, so he got in right after, and he was leaving right before, and then he ended up in Pasadena. So part of the deal, he was at Pasadena College, and then he ended up in Hermosa. And he was there for a long time, and then we were actually born in that house that he kind of moved to Hermosa with. So he had his own little cleaning service business. He played beach volleyball. He coached the outrigger team in Hermosa, just kind of hanging out. So
super interesting. So the military brought him over here.
Yep.
Where did did Dad paddle when he was growing up?
So most people paddled a little bit when they're growing up, but he didn't get serious until he moved here. So he and a bunch of his college buddies were hanging out, and they ended up at a bar called Hinano's up in Marina Del Rey, and Sandy Kahanamoku, who was the coach of Marina Outrigger, basically walked in, saw 6 Hawaiian guys sitting at a bar, and was like, hey, does anyone here know how to steer? And they're like, yeah. And so they basically recruited them. They raced the next day, and they all ended up paddling for Marina. So he was kind of recruited out of the bar, started paddling there, and then the drive from Marina to Redondo's maybe 10 miles. But at a certain point, he got tired of driving that far and all that traffic, and so he broke off and started his own club with his brother, which was the club that he founded in Lanakila.
Rad. These guys very well. Uncle Bud Hull and Billy Whitford were in here and talking a lot about that story, and your dad came up with the creation of Lanakila. Was there something about their first canoe? Like they found like an old canoe and put it back together or something? Oh, don't.
Yeah, a lot of these stories come with like family dinner, so I haven't heard some of the stories in 20, 30 years.
Got it. Does your dad have a nickname?
No.
Oh, I thought I had heard a funny one, but I'm not going to say it because if it's wrong, I don't want to say it. No, if you don't know it, it's not important for this call
or I forgot
it. So your parents meet in Redondo.
Yep.
And you guys grow up there. You haven't left. You have a younger brother?
I have a younger brother.
Got it. And it sounds like you guys grew up both like in sports kind of together to some degree.
Yeah, so we grew up, did the little league, soccer, basketball, all that stuff. And of course in South Bay, you got to do junior guards and grow up surfing. So we kind of did a little bit of everything, but it was very seasonal. So these 2 or 3 months were this, next 2 or 3 months, and we just kept moving on. But we had my brother in the house, so he's 13 months younger than me, so basically a year. And we had my uncle Josh living in the house, who's 14 years older than me.
Josh Creighton.
Josh Creighton. So he also paddles. He was coach of the team. But for me, it was kind of like having a much bigger older brother. So in the house, there's, you're competing for food, you're competing for pretty much everything. And I'm a little bit bigger than my little brother, but he's freaking good at everything. And I'm definitely smaller than Josh.
Sure.
So I was kind of stuck in the middle.
So I've known your uncle Josh Creighton for a long time, but I don't know, what's the family relation?
So that is my mom's half brother.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And the Creighton family is unbelievable.
Yeah.
What great people. Okay, I didn't realize. So he grew up in your house with you?
So when he was in high school, his dad was traveling a bunch. His mom moved up to Orcas Island, I want to say, like Orcas Island up in like Washington, Oregon area. But so when he and his sister were going to school, we had basically it was a 2-bedroom house that had been cut into 2 single-bedroom houses, and they lived literally on the other side of the wall.
Oh, wow.
So when the parents were gone, they basically came over. My mom, raised them, dinner, all of that. And so it was like having more siblings in the house.
Yeah. And you said he's 14 years older?
Yeah.
So my older brother is 10 years older, so I kind of know what that span feels like. And my youngest, my oldest and my youngest are 8 years apart. So I see how that works. How did that work with Josh? Because he was also pretty good. He's a great paddler. I don't know what he was like then. Was he, did he beat you up? Did he pull you along with him to go do stuff? Like, what was that like?
All of it. So it was interesting because growing up, we lived on the beach. So we go to the beach all the time. Josh was always there, and he was in high school and he was going to college. And it was interesting because he was always studying. He was always working super hard. He was always training. And it never dawned on me and my brother because, he's better than us at everything. And he works super hard. We're like, that's great. But we didn't know he was like a C student, and he was working really hard to keep up with everybody. And like some of the guys he was training with and coming up with, Cliff Meidel, Norm Meidel, Nathan
Cliff,
Shore, Olympic kayakers.
Yeah.
So he's always chasing them around. Brad Gill was on that team back in the day. And so he was always, he was working the hardest. He wasn't the most talented. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the strongest. But in our eyes, it was like, oh man, this guy's amazing. He's so smart. He's so fast. Look how hard he works. Oh, he can totally keep up with those guys. This is amazing. But he was, he would come back and we'd see how hard he worked. And then he's bigger than us. So he'd beat us up, and then he'd drag us out along. So he's actually, he and my dad are the big influences for got me into paddling. Josh would grab us and be like, hey, get in this kayak, get in this one man. Hey, we're going to go do a 16-mile paddle. You're going to sit in a 2-man. Don't worry, Cliff will pull you around for a while. I was like, oh, this is fun. This is way better than me getting on a 1-man, get my butt kicked by everybody, like not knowing what I'm doing. But yeah, he was a big influence, just kind of dragging us along. More importantly, he'd hang out with us, and I remember like middle of the night, it's like 2 a.m, I'd wake up and be like, what's going on? And he's playing video games.
That's
so
funny.
study, take a little break. So we'd jump up, play video games with him, and then we'd go back to sleep, and he'd go back to studying.
So you had some pretty good influences in the house between your dad and I'm assuming mom too, but having Josh there, like somebody working that hard, I always just believe like it leaves a mark. Like osmosis is powerful, whether it be direct or indirect. Like you're getting that, you're seeing somebody working super hard, training really hard. Like that's got to be influential, I would think.
Just having it around just kind of became the norm. So even if I felt super lazy, I was working way harder than everybody else I knew and had no idea. And then he did, I remember more the influence age where you're in like, early teens, whatever. He said one thing to me, I was like, shit, okay. He goes, the one thing you can control is you can make sure no one ever outworks you. And I was like, that's going to be so difficult. But it was a good thing, a lot of times when you're training, you hit a kind of like a wall at some point, you just don't want to do it anymore. You're like, no. This is the one part I can control. Can't control the weather, can't control the ocean, can't control who's going to be there, can't control if I'm going to be there. But I can make sure if I am there, no one's ready to outwork me. And so that's kind of a theme that was in our family. It was a theme that's been passed on to our club, and it's a theme we pass on to the next generation. It's like, hey, some people are better. It's fine. But let's just be the most prepared. Let's be ready to work the hardest. Let's essentially be the toughest, and we'll go with that.
That's such great advice. It looks like it's worked pretty well, Danny.
It's a hard life, but it's really, really fun. Super enjoyable.
Well, I mean, I think of the people the people that resonate with me are the super high achievers, and you can follow. I follow. That's who you follow follows you on social media. Like I follow people that are doing incredible stuff, and the quotes that come out from that quote is very much like a Kobe Bryant quote. Like nobody's going to outwork me. I'm going to do 3 workouts to their 2, and after time, that's compounding, and no one's going to be able to outperform me. And that's kind of what you're like. That's pretty cool.
And that was a big, it was a section of my life where I had all the time in the world, and so that's kind of what I did. And now I've hit a new section of my life where
you don't have unlimited time anymore.
I like sleeping, so we got to slip a little bit of that in there. And my wife and I, we always get in this fun conversation. She's like, "Well, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this." I was like, "Yeah, but you also want to sleep 8 hours. So what are we giving up? That's the one thing time you can't have more of. You can't double it. It is what it is. And if I spend an hour doing this, I cannot spend an hour doing anything else." So we're working on that. We're getting in a good spot right now where we have the kids, we have the paddling, we have work, we have social lives. Just kind of blending that all together and then making conscious decisions to sacrifice certain things. Man, I would love to go paddle again. But I would also like to take my girls bike riding today because it's perfect. And I can paddle tomorrow morning in the dark while they're sleeping.
Listen, the dark, thank you for that. So a lot of what this podcast is about is what you just talked about. It's the stuff that people go, how does Danny do this? But you really articulated, we figured out a way to do it all. And this is where the compromise happens. You have to give up, I'm not willing to give up my 8 hours of sleep. So I'm gonna have to figure out what else I can do to make it all fit. And before we got in here, we were having a coffee and you shared with me your kind of views on your girls' sports. They're young, they're into sports, and you're like, no, we're not gonna do 18 sports.
They're 5 and 8. They gotta figure it out. We want to expose them to as much as we can. And then one of the things I loved growing up was we had a million sports to do, but they were one at a time. And so looking back, I remember being excited to go into the sport. I remember being excited playing the sport. I remember hitting a point in the sport where I was like, oh, is this over yet? I can't wait to go to the next one. This one's getting boring. And then we'd finish and have a couple weeks off, and then we get on to the next one. So, you have your soccer, and okay, that season's over. Now we have baseball season. Okay, that season's over. Now you have junior lifeguards. And all of those were super enjoyable to have a beginning, middle, and end instead of a continuous, never stopping loop. And so I think for the little kids, that's kind of important. I enjoyed that part of my life. I look back on it fondly now, and I want to make sure that the girls have that. So we're kind of building into that stuff, and we're getting into soccer, we're getting into baseball, we're trying out new things. I think my oldest is going to try junior lifeguards this year. She's on a swim team, but the least committal, there's not 500 swim meets, there's not 50 practices. We're trying to get her in water polo, but there's just, they want 5-6 days a week. And I go, no, we're going to swim practice. They have 3 of them a week. Go to however many you want. It's just to learn how to swim and to play, and she loves it. The kids are there. For whatever reason, the scheduling is kind of late at night, and then there's an early one if you're not as good, if you're lower level. And all the kids that get bumped up all come back because they don't want to be swimming till 8 p.m. They'd rather get out at 6:30 with their friends and have a life. So we're enjoying it. Teach them skills, teach them discipline, and the big one for me is, hey, look, we start something, we finish it, and if you're on a schedule, you're committed to a team, we got to do that part. So that's really all I need them to learn at this age. And if they got to learn how to throw a ball better, they can do it later when they love it. And this is the only thing they ever want to do for the next 6 months.
It's so smart, Danny. Listen, as my kids have gotten older and I've had more of these kind of conversations, it's the people that have professional coaching skills or experience in this world that can really differentiate and say, no, you're going to burn them out. It's unnecessary. We're going to pare it back and we're going to make it fun. Make it fun, and when they get really, really, really into it and they want to go super hard, let them go hard. Help them. But I think so many parents miss it. They're Tiger parent coaching. Growing up surfing here, there was all these, growing up in Newport surfing, there were so many parents pushing their kids, and it's way worse now, pushing their kids when they're 4 and 5 years old to surf every morning, nonstop, and they come up the beach crying, and you're like, I don't think that's the outcome you were looking for, right?
It's you learn these skills, and there's certain things you can learn at that age, and it's fine. But the trade-off is you don't want them to hate the sport. You don't want them to be so invested now that they don't want to do it later. You want them to love it. You want them to have a passion for it. You want them to want to go back on their own, and that's kind of that big thing. At a certain age groups, you can teach things, and so I'm still learning that because first time father, 2 kids, hitting that age. I'm hearing it from my friends. I'm hearing it from people that are older, like, hey, when your kid turns this age, you got to do this. And just kind of weighing everyone else's experiences with my own and then going like, here's the decision I want to make. And at the end of the day, also, sometimes we sit down and be like, oh man, we really need to practice soccer more. We're terrible at it. Should probably play soccer once before we show up 6 months from now at the first game.
Right.
So, just kind of evaluating and adjusting as we go.
One of the things that I was told early on that I appreciate and sometimes have a little regret on, but I was really trying to get my kids into surfing. And my oldest, Gianni, we were going and going and going, and then he kind of stopped being that into it. And one of my good friends goes, hey, the harder you push him into surfing, the faster he's going to pick up football. And I was like, okay, I'm going to back off a little bit. But I think there's a good lesson in there. We'll talk more about your coaching because I think we're picking up on some of the psychology that you believe in right now, the way you focus on it. I think it's really wise. Make it fun, right? Make it fun first.
It's got to be fun or nobody wants to come back.
Yeah, that goes for almost anything.
Definitely for adults too.
Definitely for adults too. Well, listen, I'm guessing that when you were in school and you were talking about paddling with your dad and with Josh and Lanakila was started by your dad, what role did Lanakila play in your life growing up?
Well, so for me, my dad was a coach, my mom was on the team, Josh paddled on the team, and so that was basically most of our summer was going to outrigger events, going to the 6-man events. There weren't a lot of 1-man events. I think like the Hano Hano was around, and they were mostly surf skis back then. But we would just go to those summer events, and so because there was training all summer, usually started around May, and it ran through September, that's the part of, childhood you remember the most, the summertime. So we would, Josh and my dad would go paddle, and then they'd come back, and my mom would, build this big dinner. Somewhere between just Josh and my dad and the entire club of 30 to 40 people would show up to my house, and spaghetti add rice, chicken on the barbecue, and people would just come over and hang out. And so that was like every Tuesday, Thursday, plus we'd travel on weekends. And then when we would go to these races, there weren't a lot of boats, but there were a lot of people. And so I know like Uncle Sandy was there, Uncle Bud was there, Billy Whitford, and we'd go to a hotel on Friday and we'd spend the night, and we'd wake up and we'd go to the race on Saturday. And as a kid, we didn't race, we'd just be at the beach all day. They'd race all day, they'd go to the after party, we'd all go to the hotel, swim at the swimming pool, and then we'd all leave Sunday. So it was kind of like every couple of weeks, it was a big weekend adventure. Anytime we went more than 45 minutes or an hour, we'd get a hotel, we'd go the day before. It was a big setup. San Diego, Santa Barbara is all 2 hours away from LA, so it's perfect. And for us, that was just kind of how life was. And so as we got older, we started paddling a little bit, but it was just the summertime regatta stuff. So for the regatta stuff, they're just sprint races in the summer, 5 minutes-ish. And as a little kid, it's 6 minutes, but you're at the beach all day, and we loved it because we'd play in the water, we'd play on the sand, we'd go do our one race, we'd come back, we'd play some more, and the parents would basically barbecue and hang out, and it was our version of just kind of like, Hawaiian time, family time, cruising. And that was pretty much every summer.
It's so fun. Until
we were like into it, and so my brother and I got into it, but I was a little more into it than he was.
Got it. But so real quick, that kind of, it'll almost sound cliche, but like that ohana, like that weekend
and
family
Tuesday, Thursday nights.
And Tuesday, Thursday nights, like, does that still happen as much?
Not as much. I know with, the clubs, our club sometimes is upwards of 300 strong. Wow. So and that's men, women, juniors. And so they're kind of parceled out. We've been doing a good job of starting to put things together. I know some of the ladies put together like a first Friday, go out to the bar, happy hour cruise. But as far as the family stuff goes, we do family dinners every once in a while, but we kind of have to schedule them more. People's lives seem to be way busier now than they were back then. So if we do a family dinner, we get my dad invited, we get the Creightons come up, so Josh and Jane will come up, and then we'll do a family dinner either at our house or my dad's. But again, scheduled, we can do 2 a month. But it used to just be like, after practice, everybody comes over. There's ice chest full of beer, there's food over there, come in. Always be very modest on your first pass, and then after that is game on.
Game on.
Yeah, everyone gets one good plate, and then if you grab the pot and run, you're good.
Well, it's interesting, and it hadn't occurred to me, but I think I was wondering why you thought maybe that that kind of family weekend event has kind of parsed back. Like races, people go race and leave.
Yeah,
there might be a little bit of a hangout, but not a ton. Not like the old days.
We're working on that.
But
now.
I also think that what you just said, like lives seem to be so much busier. And everybody has 18 games for their kids. Like it really is different.
Yeah.
When I'm older than you, but when I was a kid, it was like one sport, and it was 3 months. And then you went to the next sport. It wasn't year round of everything that you did. So Interesting. You mentioned something about how it was just the summer. And we were just kind of talking about how things kind of run together and you can have high burnout. Like,
Yeah.
I look at your history of all the different crafts. Is some of that based on it makes it more interesting, there's more opportunity, if you were paddling one craft year round, would that burn you out?
Yes.
Yeah.
100% yes. And the nice thing about paddle sports is there's so many different ways to do it. I always joke, it's like riding a bike. Somewhere between strand cruiser and a bar hop and Tour de France and mountain bike in the middle. You can do it in so many different ways that's interesting and slightly different. And then for me, when I was 18, I did a year where I was super into paddling and I was averaging about 80 to 100 miles a week. And I was sick and injured the whole year, just struggling the whole time. And I kind of broke it up after that. But I did a little bit of the surf ski stuff. There was like a season for it. I did a little bit of the Olympic flatwater kayaking stuff. Again, there was a season for it. I coached the outriggers, the big boats, the 6-man. So big boats, they're heavier, they're coordinated, they're teams. And then there's like a single season kind of in the winter. And I mean, one of my favorite sports in high school was swimming. Not because I like swimming. Swimming's hard. Swimming's pretty terrible. But I love the aspect of being part of a team and having an individual side. And the fact that you can swim freestyle, you can swim butterfly, you can swim breaststroke, backstroke, you can kind of switch it up the whole time. So even in a season where you would have burnout, you could do all these different things that made it interesting. Like, oh man, I'm not a breaststroker, but I'm gonna try that today. Why? I just need to switch up the muscles. I need the brain to have, come off of 50-meter sprints and just chill. And I wanna swim today and enjoy it, not hurt and suffer every single day. So with the paddling stuff, throwing in the surf ski, throwing in the stand-ups when that came around, even that was tough. That's the hardest, slowest version of paddling that I do. And it was still really interesting because standing and catching wave is really fun.
Really fun.
And if you're just cruising, the view from standing is so much better than from sitting just because you're higher up. So incorporating those things to just switch it up, let the body kind of recover and heal a little bit, let the mind kind of just be excited to do something different, and then just challenging yourself in something new. So I don't like sucking at everything the first time, so you don't do something new every day. But I do enjoy figuring things out. So occasionally on a day off, hey, I want to go try this version of paddling. Yeah, that was hard. That was terrible. But that was fun and interesting too.
Well, I don't think you sucked at any of those for very long. But with your work ethic and everything else, and obviously with the background and everything. Just a quick question. I'm bouncing around a little bit, but how much of your success, and we talked a bit about the work ethic, but how much is natural talent versus work ethic versus I'd rather go to the hospital than let that guy beat me? Because I think there's some of that in there too.
I would like to say it's all work ethic because that's the hardest thing is to wake up every morning and go do it. But I do know, again, in hindsight, that I am very talented at a lot of things. Didn't know that growing up because I had a younger brother that was just as talented and younger, which is, that's something pushing you. And then I had my Uncle Josh in the house who's just bigger, older, better at everything and worked the hardest. It took me up until high school to recognize that, wow, come on guys, come on friends, like how come you're not good at this yet? Like figure it out. Like older brother got it, younger brother got it. Like how come you guys can't figure this out? And then they're like, no dude, you're just really good at everything you do. Like pick up a basketball, go. Pick up soccer, go. Oh, you're gonna swim, you're gonna join the swim team as a sophomore. Oh, cool, good job. You just set the school record.
Wow.
So, but little things like growing up in the water, swimming all the time, and not necessarily having all of the one sport training. But for me, I've been very, very fortunate to be really good at everything. But I just looked at it like my mom's good at everything, my dad's good at everything, my brother's good at everything, my uncle's good at everything. I'm somewhere in the middle, hopefully. And then I go up next to normal families. I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm great.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But for me, as soon as I figured that out, that was that big, conversation with Josh. Hey, don't let anyone outwork you. There's a gift you have. Don't waste it. All those things. So that always kind of runs through my head. And then the other one, like growing up and having those family dinners and then watching my dad coach and watching my uncle coach, is that whole pay it forward. You have this gift, you have this talent, and you love this sport, you love teaching this sport. Let's pass all this knowledge on. Make sure everyone who wants the opportunity has the opportunity to do that stuff. So there's a work ethic involved. There's definitely some natural talent involved. But I think the big one, and this is what I learned coaching, is to get to that super elite level, you got to have something between oh my God, I'm going to die for this, and or I'm doing this for someone else. And so as soon as I hit that, I have to explain something, I'm doing it for somebody else. I went from, hey, I can keep up with really good people to, oh, I'm paddling next to them really easy. Oh, I'm off the front. Hey, I'm off the front. Come on, come with me. We're all going off the front together. And I think for me, that was a big personal growth of all of everything, paddling, life, study skills, just trying to be basically a good person to people I know and meet. And so that was like that big, wow, if you can pay it forward, if you spend time and energy and that's important to you, a lot of good things just start happening.
I love that. So on point. Where did you learn that? Did you glean bits and pieces along the way, or did someone embed that in you? Was it a combination of your dad and Josh? Was it?
So it was a lot of the family stuff. It was there. We're always doing it. We're always helping, inviting people over. Doesn't matter. Just like, yeah, the more the merrier. And then it was paddling at Lanakila. It was my dad. It was Josh. It was my mom. So just the group and the community we hung out with, that's just kind of what we did. So Josh was like the first kid brought into the canoe club. And, my dad's met my mom. That's the little brother. You got to be nice to him. I was like, all right, well, he gets in because, related. And then I was like the next generation of like kids brought in to paddle out of the kids program. Because it used to be like kids program was almost like a parents paddle, you guys paddle. It's like a babysitting thing. And then it turned into like, hey, I want to be good at this. I want to be better at this. Let's practice. Okay, hey, let's start grabbing kids. And so once I graduated out of the kids program, became an adult, was coaching, we started grabbing some of the younger kids and kind of paying it forward because that's what we did. I felt like I got a lot of information, Olympic kayaker Cliff Meinl was my first men's coach outside of my Uncle Josh. I was like, oh, okay. This is what you do when you're an Olympian. You just teach the next kid. So we ended up, that's where we met, that's where we started coaching Kel Thompson, Kel Swartz, and Will Reichenstein. That was kind of that first group. And even before that, Tyson Poplar. So we had a bunch of like, just the next generation down, 4 or 5 years below, and kind of, we've been coaching kids for so long, I laugh. I was like, now we have Ryland Hard, who's coaching the Outrigger Canoe Club on Oahu, which is like the most famous canoe club. Yeah. It's a huge deal. He's basically doing a whole rebuilding project to bring them back to glory. And I was like, yeah, that's like the 7th generation of junior we started coaching. And we just kind of keep sending them out in the world. And, originally you want to help little kids out. You want to pass it forward. And then I was like, oh, man, but, selfishly, one day these kids are going to grow and they're going to be big and then they're all going to be on my team. We're going to kick everyone's butt. And now they're all coaching teams that come out and try and beat me. And usually do.
Well, I don't know about that. You know what? I was going to talk about coaching later in this conference. Let's keep going with this because it reminds me of a lot of, like, for anybody that paddles outrigger in Southern California and Hawaii, they know the relationship with you and Ryland Hart. He was your protege. I mean, how old were you? I'm going to turn this into questions. How old were you? I'm sorry. How old was Ryland when you started coaching it?
10.
And how old is he today?
I think he just turned 23.
And how do you guys, how is it for you as a coach and a friend to see what has transpired from the time when he was 10 till now that he's 23 as a coach at Outrigger Canoe Club, iconic as you said, and you guys now compete. So your protege also pushes you, I would suspect, or challenges you.
Yes.
Like you guys are up there.
And, it's one of the conversations we have when they're growing up, when they're little, 10-year-olds, I'm just making it fun. As they become teenagers, I kind of give them, tips and tricks. And one of the things I always remember growing up as a teenager trying to compete with adults is we had 8 races a year on the singles. I would race like Mike Eisert and I would try and beat him. And then it wouldn't happen. And then it was like, hey, see you in 4 weeks or a year. That was your one opportunity. Coaching Ryland was the first group where I was like, you guys are at practice every day. You're 14 to 16. Get on my wake. Let me show you what I'm doing. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing as I'm doing it, and then I'm going to drop you. And then I'm going to come right back and give you another opportunity 1 minute later. I'm going to do it again. Here's the counter move. And so we were able to kind of run through a bunch of those. But now it's funny because we'll be setting up each other to burn them on a turn, and the turn's 3 miles away. And sometimes there's people in the mix. But long story short, teaching him all of the tricks and then always saying, hey, look, if you ever figure out like something else out and you burn me on it, 1, get me. 2, come back and tell me what that was because I want to grow. I want to learn too. So with Rylan, now that he's coaching outrigger, we're bouncing ideas off each other. I help him out with certain things. He rebuttals and tells me how it's done now, and it's actually really interesting to watch him grow from a little kid to a teenager, kind of learning and absorbing, asking questions, to wait, I kind of know what I'm talking about, and now we're having usually adult conversations about, hey, why did this work for you and it didn't work for me, and vice versa. Hey, I have this guy who's doing this one thing and I keep saying it over and over. What's 2,000 more ways to tell him I just need him to sit up and breathe sometimes? And so it's pretty cool. It's fun to kind of see where the level's going. And, I always say is, look, if I'm going to take the level from here to here, this is where you guys start now. So keep going up. And in the same way I dragged you up, if you leave here, I'm coming with you.
Yeah, I love that. There's a quote, I don't know if you'll remember it, but I have it. But there's a quote that Ryland says that you said to him about, I'm going to create a world champion. You know which quote I'm saying? No. Ryland, I'm going to help you. I'm going to coach you to be a world champ. You have to coach 3 others to do that. Yeah. Or something along that line.
Yeah, and that's that whole pay it forward mentality. Is, hey, look, I know how to be a world champ. I can tell you everything I did to be there. Here's all of the information that I could possibly give you, and I will go do the work with you. But now you got to go teach somebody else. And that's kind of a big thing we push in our club. And, it has its good moments of things like that. Where you're like, wow, we're inspiring, we're growing, we're teaching all these people. It's so helpful. And then sometimes we show up to practice and there's 70 people all coaching each other. And it
never happens, right? That's, it's interesting. So I've just got some quotes because, I really like Rylan and what a good kid, and what you've created or helped him create. What he's turned into under your tutelage has been incredible to watch, and really fun to watch you guys now battle. Like, it's got to feel so good that somebody you brought on when they were 10 is now next to you in the Molokai race when you guys are trying to both win it. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see that. And then there's other kids. There's Noah Melroy. He's up in Santa Cruz, and now I think he just moved to Sacramento. And we had Keone DeFries. There's a big group that came with him. Miles Orr was on that junior team that went to Tahiti and got second with Ryland and those guys, and he's crushing in Hawaii as well. So it's really cool to see that growth exponentially of those people, because those kids kind of come together, and it starts as 1 or 2, and then it doubles, and then it doubles, and suddenly you have all these kids that are fired up and inspired. And we never had teenagers or 20-year-olds when I was growing up going through the program. It was me, and then it was a bunch of 30 or 40-year-olds and a bunch of 10-year-olds. So we're trying to grow that middle section, and pretty interesting with the influx of dragon boat being super huge here. I know Josh Wong down in Long Beach has a big group going. I know here in Newport there's another big group. We're getting all these early 20-year-olds that are fired up on paddling one-mans and then dragon boats, and then they're jumping into 6-man. So it's really enjoyable to see this. And a bunch of those guys have come and paddled with us, and we've come down to paddle with them. So there's a lot of sharing of information and knowledge and training down here in Southern California. So there's no my way or the highway, and you're doing it wrong. It's people who want to paddle with others.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I know that at Lanakila you've now built this incredible program. I think you mentioned 300 people, and talk a little bit about what's going on there. I mean, the growth of it, because just to frame it, other than the Dragon Boat folks that you just mentioned, which has been a huge turnout, which is so fun to see all these young folks going really hard outrigger, there's not a lot of natural occurring young people. There's paddle camps, and then it kind of I think there's a gap. So you've kind of bridged that gap up there with that example you were just giving. How are you guys doing that?
So it comes with the community. It comes with a lot of help. There's no one person that does everything. It's too big of an ask. It's too big of a toll, because I call it, we hit critical mass, where we kind of just hit this number where we have so many people with good intentions who want to help. The hardest thing is to kind of give them a job that they're good at, that they want to do, that they love, and kind of incorporate that. So we have Amy Spector on our side that runs the junior program, and it's awesome. She's there all the time. She has a schedule and a program, gets everyone fired up, and she teaches them all the skills, which is, if you've ever come to an outrigger practice, we rarely teach you the skills. Imagine going to learn how to swim and someone threw you in and said, go that way. All right, now come back. There's no, hey, this is how your paddle works. This is how you flip over. This is how you load. It's normally get in, follow the guy in front of you, follow the girl behind you, and just stay in time. So she does a really good job of kind of incorporating that and then making it fun. And we have another guy on the team who actually hasn't raced with us in years, but he's down there all the time. Whenever he is, brings out a bunch of kids. Tim Tamanaha, hey, somewhere between 10 and 18, we're going to go paddle 10 miles. We're going to go to the cove and surf. We're going to flip some boats. We're going to learn how to climb in and out of the water. All the fun stuff that most teenagers would never get because they're too into sports. And most little kids wouldn't be brought along because it's too dangerous. We kind of incorporate that all together. And then from that group, we open up a dialogue. We open up the one-mans. We open up access to the men's practices, to the women's practices, and say, hey, look, yeah, you're going to come up here. If you want to come, it's open. And by creating that bridge that starts from the people running the youngest group to the people running the most elite group, if there's communication and it's connected, then we can kind of pull those people across. But, as a little kid, it's scary to go paddle with 30 adults. You're like, oh, I'm like 15, you're like 50. I don't want to hang out with you.
For sure.
But you get one up there, then you get 2 kids, and then, oh, well, our friends are going, so we bring 4, 5, 6, and suddenly they get spread out, they get their own boats, and we just kind of help them out. Plus, the equipment now is so much better than it used to be. I always joke, I'm like 6'1" wingspan, but I'm only 5'9", and I tell all the juniors, like, oh, well, the boats used to be heavier. They're like, what? I go, yeah, when you're carrying those boats and you're growing, my legs got shorter, my arms got longer. Now the boats are like 160 pounds. It's like, oh, you get the front, I get the back. But they used to be 400-pound holes were the good ones. And then there were 500 pounds with all the crap in it. And then it rained and you put more stuff in there. And then like where we launch out of Lanakila, we actually go down these cement stairs, super uneven,
Gnarly, yeah.
Low tide. It's like 30 feet to the bottom sometimes. But you got to pick them up and go up and down. And when we were 10 and unders, we had to carry the boats as a bunch of 10-year-olds and one adult making sure no one got squished. So big thing for us is we want to include more juniors. We want the best paddlers on the team to do that whole pay it forward, help each other out. And when I started coaching in 2005, the men's program, that was the first thing I did. There's no more, I'm a good paddler, what can you do for me? It's, no, you're a good paddler, you have one job. Mark over here hasn't won a race in like 6 years. He tows the trailer. He does all these things for the club. He's such a good helper. Danny, get in with him and make sure he wins a medal today. It's like, wait, no, I'm the best paddler. I should be with the best paddlers. No, you paddle fast. Go paddle fast. By the way, the boats wouldn't be here without him, so let's go. And so we kind of implemented that, and I always joke when I came in my first year coaching, we had a lot of people who were entitled. We had a lot of people that like, no, this is how things have always been done. And I always joke, I came in, we needed to trim some fat, and I came in with a hatchet and just took everything out. So I think at the end of my first year coaching, we had 2 crews at Catalina, which is 18 guys. But of those 18 guys, every single one of them was in the same, I'm going to work the hardest, I'm going to work most often, I'm going to help everybody. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a team crew where I was like, thank God these guys are on my team this week, because on Tuesday they were kicking my butt at practice.
Wow.
So it was a good, kind of build it up, pay it forward, and then from that group, everyone who comes in, that's the culture. So it's just established. You come in, you help, you work harder, you help more people, you have more fun. See you tomorrow.
Danny, I wish we could bottle that and sprinkle it on everybody. Like, that's the best outlook. I mean, how do you build great people? By building great people, right? Like, I just love that whole outlook on how you do it, pay it forward, wherever you got it from and picked it up from, mom, dad, uncle, everybody. But like, it's really magic. And you look at the results all these years later, whether it be the Rylands and the Miles and these guys, or you look at the next 10-year-olds that you're working with, and gosh, I'm going to be 50 when that guy is 18 or 20. What then?
Yeah, and it also helped when I came in, there was a big core established in Lanakila of the hierarchy where my dad was running. He's the head of everything. We have Jill Schooler, who's been the women's coach since, I don't know, like 30 years. So there's established heads of state. When I started coaching, Moses Ramler, our president, came on. His brother Hayden does all the photos out in Hawaii. Moses also does photos, great paddler as well, always in the first team. But now having that group behind me when I was 24 or something like that, telling a bunch of adults what to do, they're all standing behind me. So when an adult looks at me like, hey, little kid, I've been paddling longer than you've been alive, don't tell me what to do. There's my dad, there's my Uncle Josh, there's Jill. Like, that's, I came in at the right time to make those calls and establish that. And, at the end of the day, coaching, we always joke, is it's a recreational sport. We all pay to be here. Nobody is paid to be here. So Let's make sure we enjoy it. And at the end of the day, if I make a bad call, guess how I'm going to be judged? The result. So when I have a bad result, I got to go back to the drawing board. I got to apologize, do whatever it is, and we go. And if I'm right, okay, I'm right. We had a good result. It's still a club, still basically a family. I still need to do things in a way where we still want to hang out and be friends. So it's a fun back and forth. I got a lot of support in the club, a lot of, just a lot of people that came before me that set things up in a way where I was just perfectly ready to take over. And sometimes you get lucky too.
Well,
it's good timing.
Yeah. Well, and you make your own luck to some degree. But you started as a coach. You've talked a little bit about it. You started really young. How old were you when you started coaching?
So the first time I coached was in 1998, and I was 14. I took over the junior program because our junior coach basically retired. He was done. And when we showed up to practice, there were no coaches. So I went through the process. Hey, we got to put the life jackets in. We got to put the bail buckets in. Hey, we're going to go. Okay, we're going to jump in. We're just going to do the workouts that we always do. We're going to practice our turns because it's regatta season, which is a sprint and a turn and a finish. So practice starts, practice turns, go. So I was 14. Actually, I just turned 15, and I was coaching the 1900 boys and the 1600s.
Wow.
So that was also the year like one man started showing up to regattas. So I remember like the first hurricane canoe from Ozone came out. And I was racing against the men on those boats. So I used to race like Rich Long down at Dana. They had their old boats, and I had this fancy new rocket ship. So they're always complaining that the boat was too fast. But yeah, so coaching in 98. And then I coached the juniors until 2000 and I want to say 1 or 2 when I graduated. But same thing happened with the men is I kind of got on the men's program. I was paddling with the men. And then our coach retired, and I showed up to practice the next year, and we're all standing around, and let's
here we go again.
Let's put some boats in the water. And the boats went in the water. I was like, okay, let's get in the boats. We all got on the boats, and they all turned around like, what are we doing, coach? I was like, oh, shit.
Here we go.
All right, I guess I'm coaching the adults now. So that's
how old were you?
That was 2005. So I was 20. What is that? 22, 23, something like that.
I think what I read in 2005, at the age of 22, Danny became the youngest outrigger head coach in history.
No, at
that's
our
what
club.
That's what
at
it
our
said.
Club.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
Because Ryland's been coaching. He was coaching Kalahui Kai. He's like 19.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
All right, I'll scratch out that history.
Not history, just Lanakila.
Lanakila.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
But yeah, so this year I guess will be my 20th year coaching the men.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I thought I'd be retired by now. I thought Ryland would take over by now.
Split town. He might come back. You never know. Ryland mentioned some stuff, and his dad Tony makes some comments that I read that are super impressive. We mentioned the one about I'm going to train you to be a world champion. You got to train 3. I love that one. Some little excerpts from their quotes from Tony. It says, and again I'm truncating it significantly. It goes, Danny's able to recognize the cream of the crop and is able to help these guys succeed, but he's also willing to take the bottom of the barrel and somehow makes that guy feel like they're a hero too. And I just thought that's a super cool, right, I can take my best and make them better, and I can take these guys and at least make them feel really good about what they're doing and get them on the path. It's just pay it forward. I think that's what you're doing, right?
And you know what? The club's not just your best paddlers. It's a club. It's a recreational thing. It's a family thing. And whenever people talk about paddling, we always hear them, if you're from the outside, talking about the race and the paddling, but it's always all the other things. So it's the community, it's the family, it's the preparation for a goal that finishes, it's the doing it as a team and or a single. I mean, even in the single season, there's so much club coordination, community help. It's a lot of times people come in, they're like, man, I wish I found this sooner. I was like, you know what this was when you wanted to find it sooner? This is every club sport, every high school sport you were a part of, where you were part of a team and there was an after party and all that stuff. But this is post-college. And it's really hard to find like a pickup football team or a pickup basketball group that hangs out, and then to have it this big where it's not just like, hey, I play at the local Wyatt. It's me and the guys from the other city that hang out. It's, Southern California is technically Santa Barbara, San Diego, Arizona, Triangle. And then we're all going to pick up and we're going to go to Hawaii. And we got a bunch of guys that are going to Sydney and New Zealand, and world championships for IVF are in Brazil. So these communities that are normally small little communities, we're going everywhere, and we're with the the help of the internet and Facebook and all that, we're communicating and dealing and talking with all these people from around the world all the time. There's no barrier of like, oh, I met you in Rarotonga one time. Remember me? It's like, hey, I met you in Rarotonga. I've been following you for 6 months. Now we communicate every day, and in 2 years, I will meet you in Brazil.
It's so cool.
So
right?
it's a big community aspect that's kind of important. So like the best paddlers are great, and we want to teach them, but the new paddlers and the not as great paddlers, they still have value to the community, to the club, and it's as important. And at the position we're in now with so many people, it's more important than how fast our fastest team can go. That's the point. That's the pinnacle. There's a big base way below that you got to take care of too.
Yeah. Well, from my history, I think it's also, thank you for sharing that. If you get into any of the paddling sports, you can go compete anywhere in the world, or go just paddle. Again, some people compete and some just go for the experience. I'm more at that point where I love to do all this stuff, but I'm not racing. I'm not trying to beat anyone because it's not going to fare that well for me.
Racing and doing the best I possibly can, but I traveled to this really cool place and I'm on vacation too. Let's enjoy that part.
Like a good accomplishment somewhere really cool with a lot of cool people.
Yeah.
It's taken me a long time to figure out how not to be that competitive and just go out and have fun. You're not there yet. You've got a long way to go with what you're doing.
I'm working on it.
Well, let's talk. Let's turn it. Thank you for all the coaching stuff. I love what you're doing. It's really impressive. And growing the sport, really developing. There's coaching and there's also developing. Like you're really developing the future paddlers and the future leaders in the sport, at least around here, which is obviously it's working with Rylan and what he's doing. So.
It's something that I grew up with that I'm passionate about. And, as much as you want to win more races, I've done everything I've ever wanted to do in the paddling sport. And now I'm just making up new things that are interesting and fun. But realistically, that developing of the next generation, it's important to me. It was important to my family. I love seeing where it's going. And for me, since I've hit the top of where I can be, the only way for me to get better without going and researching all that stuff on my own is to go send a bunch of professors out there to figure it out and tell me what to do.
That's so cool.
Can't wait till I'm 50 and I don't have to think about anything. Just show up. Rylan, which way do I go? That way. Got it.
I've been that way for a while. So listen, thank you for all that. I really want to get into some of the racing stuff. We're not going to go nearly that deep, but there's definitely some stuff we want to talk about. But one of the things you mentioned it, but I think people may not know much of the history, but you were pursuing the Olympics at one point in K1. So single racing flatwater kayak. Can you talk about, I think people go, really? But I think a lot of people actually end up in outrigger or in surf ski by way of K1.
Yeah, so it was a short-lived dream, but there's always an Olympic dream when you're young and you're into sports and stuff like that. And so I was paddling some outrigger stuff, doing a little bit of one-man things, mostly just kind of the regatta stuff. But my coach, Cliff Meidel, my Uncle Josh, all the top guys were all on these flatwater kayaks. So in like the late 90s, I guess, I was kind of into it. And at one point, basically my introduction to it was, hey, here's an Olympic flatwater kayak, get in. And if you've ever seen one of those things, they're like this wide, They're tiny. It's like trying to learn how to ride a bike as an adult. First day, like, here you go. Oh, by the way, if you keep pedaling, it's better. Good luck. And if you fall down, you fall in the water. And these things, you can't just like climb back on because they're hollow and they're not enclosed. You actually have to swim them back to where you started, empty out all the water, and then climb back in. So when I was 15, they're like, hey, we got out of like a 20-mile practice, and my Uncle Josh was like, get in. It's like, oh shit, okay, take a lap. So I get all the way around. I didn't flip. And I was like, man, I'm so good at this. I'm going to be an Olympian one day. Here we go. I showed up the next day. I flipped 22 times. Had to swim back every time. And every once in a while I get far and I have to swim all the way back. I was like, this sucks. So I got into it. I went to go do a race, the Nationals, which was like 2 months after I first tried a kayak. And so my brother and I started jumping in and learning how to paddle. We actually started driving to NAC, and we were going to the NAC Junior K1 practice run by Sam Couch. Mm-hmm. So back in the day, we'd come down and same thing. We showed up and we're like first day, like trying to paddle and we're keeping up, but we look terrible. And by the time we get to Nationals, it was like, all right, we're going to win some medals. This is going to be great. Show up. There's all these races at Nationals. I get nothing. Mm-hmm. Just a big fat goose egg. And even like the race that only had 4 boats in it, it was like the team boat race. My brother got farmed out to like, the leftover crew. Like, this is my good crew. You can have my crappy paddler. Everyone throwing a crappy paddler. They beat us. And they ended up 3rd. And so I think I was like 14 at the time. I'm just super upset about it. And my brother came home and he's a cocky little punk. And he's got a photo of him throwing up a double peace sign. He's got the medal on his neck, and he's got all the stuff. And that actually hung in our living room for like 15 years. And I would walk by, and he's like, I hate that thing. But so the next year, I was like super pissed off. I'm gonna be good at this. This is bull crap. And so I trained basically a year. My brother started training with me. He made about a month. He's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And there were times I was going in our little harbor in Redondo, which is not even 1,000 meters long, and the race course is 1,000 meters. So I'm like finishing in the ocean, and you're not supposed to take flat water kayaks into the ocean because they sink if you mess up. So I was like, trained every day, trained as often as I could, hated it, mostly by myself. Went to nationals, 7 gold medals, 1 silver. Didn't like it.
Wow. Hold on. 7 golds and 1 silver.
Yeah, so we're in the junior division.
You had a good year of training.
Yeah, but I was by myself, and I realized that year, and I was like 15, I was like, I like paddling. I hate paddling by myself. It's hard, it's cold, it's uncomfortable, nobody's there, it's not fun. Like even suffering hurts more when it's just you.
For sure.
If you're there in the dark and it's cold and it's raining and there's 10 other people, it hurts 10 times less because there's 10 people there. It just, for whatever reason, the mentality is so much harder when you're alone. So I did that. I was kind of over it, so I just stopped kayaking. I just started paddling outrigger instead. It was more fun. There were more people. There was nobody that kayaked where I live, so I was like, skip it. And then fast forward to my senior year in high school, we're like, hey, if you win the junior division, you get a trip to Brazil, go represent the U.S. at Junior Worlds. And so I hit up the best paddler on my team, my best friend at the time, this guy, Chris Stolba, still a great paddler, comes back and coaches with the women sometimes. But I was like, hey, I'll teach you how to kayak. Let's go qualify and go to Brazil. And then we're off to college where we're going to go be roommates up in Santa Barbara. So like, this is like our big, let's get out of here. So I trained him for about 2 months. He can barely get down the course by himself. But in the 2-person kayak, I balance, he pushes. And so we go up and we're like 3rd in every race. Same guy wins, same guy gets 2nd, we get 3rd. And they're like, hey, you guys made the team. We're taking 6th, so welcome. Well, day goes by, the next day we wake up, they're like, hey, you know this one race that you got 3rd in? You're like, yeah. Well, you know, we looked at the video, you actually got 4th. And we're like, oh, okay, we didn't think it was that close. Like, yeah, whatever, here's your medal back. We're going to Brazil. Okay, since you agree, we're also saying that's the one closest to time standard. That's the only one that counts. You guys are off the team.
What?
So we got kicked off the team.
No way.
So that was my, like 18.
Paddle ticks.
Yeah, but it was for the junior thing. So that was the Brazil trip that I wanted to go on. I was super pissed. Turned out it was okay. They went down. It was the same 6 people they always take. We go off to college. They're flying back. They're landing at JFK during 9/11.
Oh.
So they all get shuttled up to Albany or Lake Placid area doing their thing. So like that was like, you know, story there. But fast forward, I would show up. I was paddling one-mans, doing all my stuff. I knew the Dolans. I knew Tim Hornsby, all these kayaker guys that are, you know, a couple years behind me, but now they're all into it. And I would just show up to Chula Vista because it's a 2-hour drive.
Olympic Training Center?
Olympic Training Center. And I would sometimes come hang out for a week and train, try and drag them out to go to the colleges and go hang out and party. And then I would just show up for nationals. Or not nationals, trials. So they have like Olympic trials every year. Sometimes they're selecting a team, sometimes they're just holding the trials. So that my first day in a kayak every year was the first heat. So I just show up, kayak, have some fun, see the boys. Turns out 2007, they're sending the top 8 to Worlds to try and qualify a boat, and then the next 8 are going to Pan Ams. Well, I got in the next 8. And we end up going to, I ended up getting my Brazil trip down to Rio to go to the Pan American Games. And so ended up doing that. And so I kind of went through the whole process, went to Lake Placid for 2 months to train. Long story short, wasn't well prepared. Not me, just the organization. No coaches were there. We had to like run to practice. We didn't have boats. We got down to Pan Am's. This guy, Henry Kracek, who was like our team manager. Thank God we had him because we had submitted in April our intention. No one had changed the intention while we were doing training and adjusting, like, hey, I'm going to go K1 1000 and K4. This guy's going to go this event. And all of a sudden, we ended up all back on the original events that we had qualified in April, not the ones we were training for.
Oh, gosh, what a
in
train
the summer.
wreck.
So we get down there, we have a good time. I go through the whole process, and then afterwards, someone's like, so are you going to pursue that anymore? And I was like, you know, there's a lot of work. I'm not in charge of anything, and it wasn't ran well, which is kind of a hard thing for me. Like, if you're going to be bad at it, let me do it. And then if you're going to be great at it, let me just paddle. But that whole combination of I have to teach myself. I have to go travel and pay for everything to go train with the best people, learn from the best people. And then in 4 years, I might have an opportunity to qualify a boat. And if I do, defend that boat until the Olympics. And then I can go to the Olympics where I'm probably going to get worked. And I went, you know what? I'm going to go to Fiji on this all expenses paid OC1 trip. And I'm going to teach some people down there. I'm going to go meet some friends. I'm going to go to Tahiti after that. I was like, that sounds like a much better path, especially like I'm mid-20s. I'm like, yeah. Let's go to Hawaii. Let's go to Tahiti. Let's go to Fiji. Let's go to Australia. That sounds way better than, hey, do you want to go to Europe in the middle of summer? It's going to be really hot. Yeah. That does sound fun, but no, I'm good.
Got it. Okay. Well, really interesting. I didn't know it was that expansive, but I mean, the paddle ticks came into play. It's really interesting. Billy always talks about the difference between K1 paddling, Olympic paddling, and rowing. Or NAC. There's all this money in rowing, all the scholarships. You're going to show up at Olympic Training Center for rowing. It's going to be
all the coaches,
robust. And you get over here and you're like, we had to run there. We didn't have coaches. It's really too bad, unfortunate. Well, thanks for sharing that. Super interesting. Okay, but that takes us back into outrigger. So we've gone the long way around. We got a little bit different. So let's talk about it. So we could, as I said, we could go super deep in your history of all this stuff. But we talked about Battle of the Paddle. Unfortunately, stand-up is not as big as it used to be. But during its peak, going down and being a part of that was always incredible. I never raced, but I always went down to watch or to help out. Incredible to watch. And you've got 3. That was, for anybody that didn't know, Battle of the Paddle happened down at Doheny or at Salt Creek. The Salt Creek year was out of control. Awesome. And if you can imagine 14-foot stand-ups, was it 12 or 14 in that race?
12-6.
12-6, full-on surf, low tide, carnage everywhere. And you've got 3 of those. And that's the people that have won that. That's the Hughes and the Jamie Mitchell,
Kai Lenny, Connor Baxter.
So the who's who of paddling. So congratulations on that. But more recently, and not just recently, so you have, let's talk Molokai, which is considered the world championships in one-man outrigger. How many wins do you have, Danny?
So I have 3 that I count. There was a year where they were running 2 at a time because it started as a surf ski event, then they included outriggers, and then in 2008, Pa'a started, and they started running an OC1 only event. So I count the one where all the OC1s are there. But there was one year where I got 3rd in the OC1 only event, and then I raced 2 weeks later, and I won, but it went from racing 100 people to racing 12. So I go with 3. For me, world championships are tell everyone when it is, tell everyone the location, tell everyone when to be ready, and when everyone shows up, that counts.
So you're going against the best of the best from all over the world.
Yeah, if you're not racing the best of the best, you can. I've won world championships that way. I don't hold them at the same level that I do if your Kai Bartlett's, your Corral Juniors are there. It's a bigger deal. Everyone in your sport, when you beat the best, you feel much better than if you're like, what happened? Well, these guys showed up. Cool.
Yeah, got it. Talk about the Molokai race for you. You've done it quite a few times. How many times have you done Molokai?
On solo?
On solo.
Just solo. I started in 2004, and I think I missed 1, and there was 1 year I did 2.
Wow, so you're close to 20.
Yeah, I did a count a few years ago, right before COVID, of like all the practice runs, the relays. So you can go solo on a one-man. You can go relay, 2 people sharing a one-man. You can go in a 6-person boat, iron. There used to be an iron race. You can go 6-person boat where you bring in 3 subs, the 9-man race, the Molokai, the main one. And I think I was upwards of just over 60, and that was like 5 years ago.
That's incredible.
And we used to do years where we'd practice run on the one-man, practice run on the 6-man, do both of those races, do the relay race, stand up, Ironman, and then we had a race probably 10 years ago, the Olamau, where you'd start on Maui at like Maliko, and you'd race basically most of Maui, then Maui to Molokai, then Molokai to Oahu. And so still only counts as one Molokai crossing.
So awesome.
Yeah, so the Molokai race is like the big growing up. That's the number one. If you win that, you're the best, and that's when everyone's gunning for it. So growing up, I was like, I'm going to win that race. So a lot of what I did preparing for that was paddling, learning stuff. Met Johnny Puakea, who started sponsoring me when I was like 18. Basically said, hey, fly to Hawaii. You can stay at my house. I'll have a boat. I'll train you, whatever you want. And I talked to him for years. I'm like, hey, how do I win this? He goes, you have to move here. And I was like, oh, yeah? No, you don't. Basically, over the span of 10 years, I visited so many times. It was as if I lived there for 1 year. And, that was kind of my investment for a long time. And then I finally got one, and it was like 30 seconds I won by.
Wow.
38 seconds. And it was,
That's always amazing to me. Over 32 miles, over close to 4 hours, give or take.
that's not the close one.
Oh, that's not the close one.
No, so
What year was that one?
the first one I won was 2010. And then I want to say 2013 or 14 was the other one. I had a span where I was like top 5, like 10 times, top 3, like 7 of 8 times,
Wow.
but no wins. And then I rattled off a couple. So, but no, the close one was, I want to say 2013 or 14. Coming to the end, I was actually third with like maybe a mile to go. And I had to catch Pat Dolan, who won this year. Caught him with maybe 1,000 meters to go. And I actually still have a photo somewhere where it's me and Daniel Chun from Big Island. I passed him with maybe 200 meters left in the race. And
So you beat him in the flat water, probably upwind, when you
Very,
finish
very
in
end.
Port Lock, and it's just flat.
In the photo, I'm crossing the line, and the nose of his boat is at my hip. And it was funny because there's another photo before that where Will Reichenstein, as a 17-year-old, is water dropping for me, and he's in the back, 2 hands up, celebrating, and I think I'm still in second. And he's just like, it's over. I've been to this practice. This is the
saw it
wheelie
coming.
workout in the morning. It's cold. It's windy. It's in your face. And Danny's about to lay a beat down on somebody. And he has no idea it's coming. I was like, oh, I'm glad you were just totally confident.
What a cool, that's amazing. Because if you're not familiar with, when you come around China Wall and you're coming, the finish is how far are you going about that? That finish is
2 miles.
So let's just step back. For anybody, the Molokai race is iconic because it's across one of the heaviest channels, channel of bones, air quotes. But it's 32 miles, but the last 2 miles, so you go from big water, very confusing water, downwind to some degree.
Most of the time it's big and there's surf behind you and it comes from your right to your left and you're surfing the whole time. So you're getting pushes, you're getting help from the ocean. It makes you go really fast. Super fun. Then you round a corner and you're suddenly going back into that same wind, and it's just funneling down the mountain right into your face. This year was flat. So it wasn't that windy, and then there was still a headwind at the finish.
Wow.
So the first year I won it, I went 3 hours and 38 minutes. It was like the second, third fastest
so
time.
fast.
And then the next year I won it was 5:02, and it was the slowest winning time. So that's kind of the span. And I always joke, everyone's like, Molokai's downwind, Molokai's downwind. I was like, well, it's kind of like a cornering downwind. So it's not like the super fun, perfect downwind. It's like a hard downwind. And then 50% of the time it's not downwind.
When Johnny Puakea was in here, he talks about Molokai a lot, and he talks about he's like, it's not a surfing race, it's a cornering race.
There's surfing, but it's not a surfing race.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah.
But I mean, John. So let me ask you this question. We'll get back into it, and I think you kind of already addressed it because I've done Molokai 3 times prone, and it's kicked my ass ridiculously every.
Try stand up.
I can't imagine.
It's worse.
I can't imagine doing it on stand up. But how important was it for you? Johnny said, you got to move over here. And you're like, nope, but you were over there a ton. Can someone compete at the level that you have without spending that kind of time in that kind of water?
No, you have to spend time in that water. You don't have to do it in Hawaii because there are places that have similar conditions. Like you can be a good surfer and not surf pipeline every day. It's better if you do, if that's where you're going to compete. But realistically, you can find waves or surf or wind that is similar. You can practice those skills. You can learn that stuff, but you have to find it. So when we had to cancel, that was one of those rare opportunities in Southern California where I can go get that experience. And it's different. You're learning new things. You're trying new things. And it really helps to be in Molokai to practice those. It's not absolutely necessary, but it is the best. That's just how it is.
Well, I would imagine when you look back and you look at the compounded 60, the equivalent of 60 crossings in whatever craft, I mean, you know that water pretty well.
Yeah, and so when we came out of COVID, there was like a 5-year gap where they had canceled the race due to a storm, and then they had 4 years off. And when it came back, I was sitting there and my wife asked me, she goes, how do you think you're going to do? I was like, well, I'm going to find out 5 minutes into the race whether or not I have a chance to win this because I haven't raced these guys in that many years, but everything looks familiar. Like everything feels familiar from the preparation to the island to loading up. I had the whole family there. And then when I hit the channel, I was like, I know exactly what's going to happen. And then something would happen. I'm like, yeah, I know how to do this too. And so that was kind of that interesting, like, because I was 40 that year and I hadn't done the race since I was like 34. And so there was a big gap. And there was definitely, when I was 34, there was like, I'm just going to muscle, it'll be fine. At 40, I was like, ooh, got to have strategy, got to have a game plan, got to have all these things, got to know what's happening. I was like, oh man, is this what that experience thing people talk about is? Because this is really nice. They're like, oh, it's about to get really hard. Looking over, I was like, this guy has no idea what's happening. Oh, water changed, he's gone. So that was a really cool, like, all that experience, and then just being in the moment and recognizing, like, wow, this next part's gonna suck, but it's only gonna suck for 20 minutes, so just keep going. And a lot of people checked out in that section, so it's pretty interesting.
So you go from being like the guy that can grind it out to kind of not the elder statesman at 40, but like you've done it so many times. There's that 5-year gap because of COVID, and you come back and you're like, I wonder how I'm trained up and I'm fast, but how am I gonna fare against, like, there hadn't been a ton of experience over those last 5 years to really know where you sit, I'm guessing?
Well, there was experience, but we had come back to paddling. They just hadn't brought back Molokai yet.
Gotcha.
And so there was this like weird, we hadn't been traveling to Hawaii to compete against those paddlers over there. We hadn't been competing against the Tahitian paddlers. So normally there's this big community of everybody meets once or twice or sometimes 3 times a year where you kind of get a gauge on everyone throughout the season. Zero gauge. I just knew, I was like, man, I feel good. I'm doing really good where I live. But like, Rylan came over, so I have I can look at me versus him and then compare that versus everybody else. But realistically, I had no idea. I was like, well, God, I hope I don't get my doors blown off in the first 5 strokes, because that would be so upsetting.
Right.
So we got off the line. I was like, all right, this is going to work out. Nope, still remember how to do this.
Well, let's talk more about it, because you said you were 40 that year, but I think it was on your birthday.
That was on my birthday.
So it was on your birthday. It was also Mother's Day, right?
Yep.
And your wife's there with the girls.
Yeah, and she didn't race, and she normally races. So the first time I won Molokai in 2010, we had just started dating, and the first technical date was, she had told me like, she was paddling, and I was like, oh wow, this girl's really cute, and she's like, yeah, we're hanging out. She's like, yeah. I was like, oh yeah, I go to the gym. She's like, oh, I go to the gym. She's like, yeah, I go to this spin class in Hermosa, like at the 24. I was like, I totally go to that gym. Like, I would love to join you. She's like, yeah, 5:30 is really crowded, so I got to go at like 4:30. So I just kind of lift weights for a little while, and then we do a 5:30 class. I was like, that's great. I could totally do that. She's like, all right, I'll see you in the morning. I go, morning? Oh, okay. So I actually started going and hanging out with her at the gym at 4:30 in the morning to lift weights and to do spin class. And then that was the first year that I won Molokai. And she's like, see, you just needed to try harder. I was like, I just needed motivation for 4 a.m. That's all.
Well, you met your match, a 4:30 wife. Like, you're like, all right, she gets up, go to the gym at 4:30 in the morning. I like this woman. Right?
Yeah. And then so speed forward to this one. This is the one she's not doing. And normally when we go together, we both race. But we have the kids. She wasn't training as much. She had some work things where she just couldn't get the mileage in. So she didn't want to spend all that time and money if she wasn't going to be prepared. So she, pulled a lot off the plate for me, where it's like, I'm going to take the kids. You don't have to worry about the family. We're just going to kind of do our own thing. So like, there's a lot of things that we're kind of setting up where I was like looking ahead. I was like, don't say anything. You're going to jinx it. But like, you feel good. You look good. It's your birthday. It's Mother's Day. We're on vacation with the whole family for the first time. Like, see how it goes. And then it was just, the end was just a weird side, shitty, hard, super uncomfortable paddle. And I just started laughing. I was like, this is everything I've ever dreamed of. Perfect.
What do you mean?
So normally you surf down, and this year there was a current and a wind that was a little bit more right to left instead of from behind. And so everyone kind of knew, like, you gotta hold your line, and everything's gonna push you away from the finish line. So the goal was just keep fighting north, which is essentially you're pointing to the right side of your finish line and you're paddling across. So everyone who pointed straight ended up missing by a lot. And so it's just one of those things, like, whoever held out the longest. So I just kept going and holding, and then the further we got into the race, the more uncomfortable it turned into your face. So at the very end, we're making a run, and where I got away and got up with one other guy was, I kept going north, he kept following me, so I'd go north, he'd go north, I'd go north, he'd go north, and everyone else kind of eventually just like, I don't want it anymore. Not I don't want the race, just I don't want to hurt like this anymore, I'm going left. So everyone who peeled off ended up fighting it at the end, and getting past essentially. But even that was like, hey, I'm going really fast, but the finish line's that way and I'm going really fast this way. So it was just one of those perfectly set up. It's my birthday, it's Mother's Day, my wife's there, my family's there. The conditions are difficult surfing, which is my favorite. I like to work hard and I like to go fast. I don't like sitting there going fast. It gets boring. So, and at the very end, it turned into, we call it a tough man contest. And I grew up with some of the toughest people I know. That's the condition we love. Anything that uncomfortable, we just smile at now. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. Anyone that's still here, I hope you're this tough, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I do.
Okay, that's so awesome. And there's a quote that I have to bring up. I have to get to. Okay, here's the quote. Oh, come on, where is it? It's exactly what you were talking about. I can't find it. But it basically says, sometimes you'll come, I think it was Tony Hart, and he goes, sometimes you'll, or maybe it was Ryland, you come up on Danny, and he's got a little smirk on his face. And if it's really hard and he's getting pissed, it's a different kind of smirk, but you know he's going to do something freaking crazy. And it sounds like you embrace the suck and go even harder.
Well, so it's funny, when I was younger, that's, essentially it was beat into me by the people that were already doing it. And so the joke was, I wear a hat, and then I love to race in glasses because
nobody can see your eyes?
My smile is the same as my I'm dying face. So it's just the same look, and that's kind of the joke, is when you look over, if someone's like, hey, oh my God, he's smiling at me. Sometimes that's me crying. You just can't see the eyes, and that works too.
That's so funny. I love that. I like the hat. You got the Bretta's hat.
Oh, yeah.
Broadcast Bretta's, our good friends. Let's talk about, of the 3 Molokais, again, I would love to go so much deeper into all this, but we don't want to bore people with 3 hours of paddling talk. Of the 3 Molokais, is that the one? Is that last one in 2023 at 40 years old, Mother's Day, family there the most, or was it the first one, or were any of the 3, or the one when you snuck up on the guy and which one was the most maybe memorable for you?
Well, they're all. I couldn't pick one. Okay. Well, yeah, the first one was the first one, and it was a 10-year process of me flying to Hawaii, traveling, doing the whole thing. I had just met my now wife, and she came out for the first time. The second one, I actually proposed to my wife the day before on Molokai at our favorite beach.
Oh, no way.
And then went and won the race by 2 seconds.
Wow.
So that was like
that's the one when you chased him down.
Yeah, chased him down. So if when you finish, there's like a bridge you go under after you come all the way in, and then you got to go all the way like 2 openings to Costco. At the bridge, I was 3rd. At Costco, I was 2nd. At the finish, I was 1st. That was like
you
a really
closed the gap on 2 people right there.
Yeah, there's a whole photo sequence.
That's
it's
incredible.
Pretty.
With Will in the back with his arms
Will in
raised.
the back claiming it. I'm that was a special one, and I always joke. As a kid, I dreamt of winning Molokai, coming from behind at the finish line and crossing the line and being the champion. I don't wish that on my worst enemy. That was so painful. I think Pat Dolan ended up in the hospital, just went too hard. And then I think the last one, just having the whole family, would probably have to be the best one. Birthday, Mother's Day, kids are there. So I think that one's special. And then coming out of a big gap in races. So it's like, hey, welcome back to the World Championships. Ready, set, go. So that one was probably, I would have to go with that one as my most special.
Well, I think you said it, like, how do you pick? All 3 of those have something special. I mean, not only is it the World Championship, but each one has its own cool story around it.
Big community leading, life-changing moments in my life that happened all in that little region for each one. So that's real big. This is the culmination, my first time ever winning the Molokai World Championships, getting engaged to my wife, being there on my birthday with my family. And then the other one, just turning 40 on that day. So I still, Jimmy Austin, really good paddler in Oahu,
sure.
Good friend of mine. He still owes me that 40-year-old World Championship trophy. He says, no, you get a World Championship trophy. I go, no, I'm 40. I want my 40s trophy.
That's classic. That's so great. Real quick, what's it like? It sounds like you have your wife's, she's an athlete and a big supporter. You guys juggle a lot. How do you, this is maybe my biggest question for you, because I was telling you, I've got 1 kid at home. I could barely get out of the house right now. You've got 2 young kids. You have a wife that works full-time as a nurse. You've got your coaching, your training, and you're still training at the elite level. How like I use the word balance. I don't know if how do you make that work, Danny? I have no idea. It's so impressive.
So I love being on a schedule. I really do. I'm not really good at planning out my own schedule. Biggest thing for us is, hey, we try and take things small chunks at a time. Is I have our overall game plan. We're like, hey, here's races we want to go to. Here's your summertime, your wintertime, all the stuff we got to do, and then we break it down into weeks, and then we just get into days. But big thing for us is, hey, look, we have kids. Kids are important. Kids come first. We have their schooling, we have their sports stuff, we have all the things they want to do. But we keep it within, a little bit of balance of there are only 24 hours in a day. We need to do certain things in that 24 hours. So if you want to cut something out, if you want to steal this hour from your sleep to go paddle another hour, great. But, fortunately for us is we can train early in the morning. We have lots and lots of friends and family that can really help out with babysitting and stuff like that. So in the morning workouts, our kids are just old enough now to where the neighbors know and they can wake up and they can turn on the TV and they get about a half hour and then we come in, we get ready for school. So that helps us out tremendously with getting training in for my wife and I together. Beyond that, we have friends and family that, hey, I'll take a Saturday and then we'll take a group out for like 3 hours. And even the past couple of years, we have the Karen workout. So our very good friend Karen, she had a knee injury and couldn't exercise and couldn't really do anything. So I was like, all right, let's go on a 2-man. You can still paddle. Anyone who wants to come out on Monday, we're going to go on a 2-man. Auntie Tam, really close family friend, she's watching the girls. That frees me and Leah to go take Karen out on a workout. And now that's like 30 people in the afternoon.
So you've got a village.
We got a small country.
Yeah. Well, but that's what it would take
Yeah.
to do all the things you do at that level. It's one thing for me to get up and go to the Willie workout and get home, but for you to go and win world championships while you're doing all these other things. So just kudos for you guys figuring out how to make it all work for your family and for the community and for your competitions. It's an amazing story. The last thing I want to ask you before we run out of time is, on top of all that, you also have a business called 404 and Hippo Sticks. And you've got something new coming. Talk a bit about being a business owner and what you guys do and what's coming down the pipe.
So 404 was originally a stand-up paddleboard business. In 2010, when the paddleboard craze took off, I was perfectly trained and aged and everything to be really good at it. And so we started a board company. My partner, Greg Jensen, and I started the company in 2010. We ran race boards, surfboards, all of it, and we kind of ran the course. And in the last couple of years since COVID, the racing scene here in Southern California has kind of disappeared. I've kind of transferred more into the outrigger, which I've always been into, but since there's not also stand-up races, I'm just doing the outrigger. Well, I've worked for 20-something years with Johnny Puakea. He's coached me. I've ridden all his boats. I've been with him before Puakea Designs, before he was Kamanu, back when he was still Kaku. And basically, it's kind of that time I got an opportunity to design and produce my own OC1 canoe. And this stemmed from wanting to produce a rudderless V1 canoe for Te Huri Tawa, which is, for anyone that paddles. Stevie Boy is another world champion paddler from Tahiti. He's got his own boat model. Mark Te Huri Tawa designed the boat, and we're basically going to put it with one of our factories into mass production, where we're going to make it lighter, more durable, add some of the really cool like adjustable foot braces, foot pumps, just basically clean it up, make it really nice. While we were doing that, we got an opportunity to produce an OC1 as well. So unfortunately, Johnny and I are now going to be on separate teams, but luckily for us, it's growing the community, it's growing paddling, and anyone that wants to get a boat, the goal for both of us is we want to put people on the best, most comfortable equipment they can be on. And so whether it's the first boat, the second boat, the 20th boat, if someone introduced into this has a good experience, I know they're going to be here for life. That's kind of just how it is. They're definitely going to buy more than one canoe, and they're not always going to sell that first one because you got to bring a friend. So we're kind of now going to produce a 404 OC1 along with a 404 V1, which is already proven and made. But the idea is, great manufacturer is going to produce both the boats. They're going to distribute it worldwide, and we're going to get our first container here in Southern California probably end of January, first week of February.
Super exciting.
So I'm very excited. It's the first time I've ever designed a boat. A lot of the concepts from just paddling over the years, paddling in different locations, doing some dragon boat flatwater stuff, doing like the gorge downwind stuff, and of course Molokai in Southern California, and then the influences from like Johnny and even Kai Bartlett, kind of their boats and some of the things I like about each of them, and trying to apply them together and do something a little bit different that kind of is more me.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, experience, history, your name, reputation, and all the knowledge you've built over all these years. And credibility goes a long way with that. So it's super exciting. I can't wait to see it. I mean, the 404 boards look super fast. I've paddled a couple over the years, and you have some of the fastest guys using your paddles with Ryland and others. So it's super exciting. Congratulations. I can't wait. So you said in January they're coming.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to have one here to show and demo, one for me to race by the end of the year. So that's going to be very exciting. So that's a V1 and an OC1.
Super cool.
Yeah, so the new OC1, it's a combination of a bunch of different things, some of the kayak experience, some of the rudderless stuff. But big thing, kind of paying tribute back to where I came from and my family, is the name of the boat is the AC/DC, which people are like, rock star, blah, blah. It's Al Ching, my dad, Danny Ching. So just that combination, cool. Put it together. So combining the old with the new.
Very, very cool. Well, congrats. I can't wait to see that. It's a really exciting next chapter for you.
It's gonna be interesting. So I'm really excited to get on the water and show everybody.
Well, it's also fun to watch people. There's not a lot of pro surfers that ride their own boards to world championships, but between Kai and Johnny and now you can make these boats sing. So it'll be really cool to watch and see how it goes for you. Super exciting. Listen, I give you huge kudos, Danny, for all the things that you seem to be able to keep the balls. That might be your best skill, is how do you do everything at the highest level? And that's always, I think, super interesting for me, is like high performers. Success leaves clues. How do you do it? I think you talked a lot about it. Like, I worked harder, I'll get up earlier, but we'll schedule it and we'll plan it. And then my favorite part about all of this was the whole pay it forward concept. Like, that's really, I'm a big believer in not just community, but like there's a karma aspect to it.
Oh yeah.
Do good for others and good things happen for you. And I commend you on all of it.
Thank you. Yeah, that pay it forward thing I always think was huge. Was just, karma, like you said, our girls, the joke is if they do something bad, instant karma. And, for me, is that pay it forward. The big thing was just whenever I'm doing something for somebody else, I'm more focused, I'm better at it, I last longer, I'm trying to work for someone else. And that's that community aspect too. So it's something that I use for motivation to try and just be better all the time.
So good. I think that's the best way to cap this off. Danny, if people want to find out more about you, more about your upcoming new boat, or the paddles, or Lanakila, or anything, what's the best way to track you down or find any of this stuff?
That's a good question. I know the boat's 404Seas, SEAS.com. That's where we're going to put up the boats and stuff like that. That's the OC1. And the V1, hippostick.com is the paddles. So that's stand-up paddles, dragon boat paddles, and outrigger paddles. So I'm working on prototypes right now for a new steering blade for Ryland over in Hawaii, and a new smaller version of the paddle that we have, because that's been something people have requested. And then as far as like coaching and stuff like that, honestly, just social media, contact me. I have a bunch of cool things coming up. I'm doing a beginner OC1 class for the club I paddle for this weekend or next weekend, something like that. And then after that, we do this wave method coaching thing. Again,
that looks so fun behind a boat.
It's shocking, all the things we talk about when we're trying to explain things. And whenever I teach little kids, like when Ryland was little, like my girls now, is you just sort of push them into a wave, and the wave makes you do everything the way you're supposed to, and you don't have to think about it. So we just get a big motorboat, create a big old wave, put you on a 2-man with me or someone really good, and we just sort of paddle around, ride the wave for a couple hours, and we'll get 20 miles of surfing in 2 hours. So it's pretty awesome. But yeah, just send me a message on like Instagram or Facebook.
What's your Instagram?
Danny Ching 404.
Got it. And
very difficult.
Yeah. And there's tons of really great paddling stuff. And your social media is always good. It's the races you're doing, the stuff you're doing with family, all the cool stuff. There's a ton of stuff on YouTube with you over the years of stand up and technique work and all of the above. And let me just say the wave training, that's my whole mantra in paddling. It's like I just go looking for boat wakes anywhere. If I'm in a race and there's a boat over there, I'm like, all right, DQ, I'm going to go ride boat wakes. So yeah, that's the fun part.
That's one way to get ready for Molokai without having to go there. Just ride a boat wake for a while.
Well, I would have to ride a lot of boat wakes to get competent enough to do Molokai again. Danny, thanks so much for coming. Thanks for sharing the story. Super cool. Lots of really good stuff. Keep up the good work. We want to see you win more stuff going down.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
Danny.
Appreciate it.